voice in the distance. It's the season of possible miracle cures, where hope is currency and death is not the last unknown. Time begins to fade, age is welcome home. It's the season of eyes meeting over the noise and holding fast with sharp realization. It's the season of cold making warmth a divine intervention. You are safe here, you know. Don't forget, I love you. Don't forget, I love you. It's the season of scars and of wounds in the heart, of feeling the full weight of our burdens. It's the season of bowing our heads in the wind and knowing that we are not alone in fear, not alone in the dark. Don't forget, I love you. Don't forget, I love you. Don't forget, I love you. Don't forget, I love
Good morning. Welcome to our Sunday morning worship service brought to you from the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of York. I am Jim Hershey, and I will be helping to lead our service this morning. I found a home here in this congregation about 10 years ago, and when I realized I was a Unitarian Universalist my entire life, so I had found safety here. For this Unitarian Universalist congregation is welcoming of all seekers of truth, beauty, justice, and compassion. We cherish our diversity of race, age, gender, sexual identity and orientation, religious background, and perspective on life. We come together this morning for worship and fellowship as we greet old friends and new visitors alike. Although we can't be together in person, we gather together in spirit and in community every Sunday. We take the opportunity to greet one another seriously in this congregation, and even though we are not together in person at this very moment, We can gather in small group Zoom meetings to say hello and check in with one another. And we will do that right now for a few minutes. Watch your screen for directions to join the breakout room that you've been assigned to.
You are, Jim. Yep.
If you are a first-time visitor to our Zoom service, please feel free to introduce yourself by writing your name in the chat box and anything else you would like to share. Everyone else is also invited to type in a chat box any matters of the heart that you would like to share with the congregation today, and Reverend Terry will read them later. And so, as is customary, whenever Unitarian Universalists gather together, we begin our service by lighting a candle. Our candle flame is the flaming chalice that is the symbol of our living faith. We invite everyone at home to light a candle as we share our chalice lighting words. Our chalice lighting words today were written by Reverend Terry. Today we light a candle of peace for all those whose hearts are troubled or threatened. Today we light a candle of serenity for everyone who is searching for calm in their lives for a minute, for an hour, for a day, or forever. Today we light a candle of safety for anyone who is feeling vulnerable in body or spirit. Today we light a candle of letting go of feelings and emotions and of things that do not serve us, but burden us as we search for truth and meaning in our lives. May the warmth from this chalice that we light today hug us, embrace us, hold us, as we need to be held in these uncertain times. May its flame guide each of us to a place of joy and grace.
Good morning again, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of York. My name is Reverend Terry Cummings. I'm the minister at this congregation. And today, once again, we're bringing you our Sunday service via Zoom with some new elements and some new things. And we hope that you will bear with us as we struggle through our virtual service this morning. You know, it's really amazing that we've been doing this now for 9 months, so much that it's become almost normal. I'm not sure how I'm going to adjust to doing Sunday morning worship services in person again. But I do know that I am so incredibly grateful for all of the work that's been done by Doug Hober, Robert Felton, Matt and Gretchen, and so many others to bring you our Sunday morning services live and not fully recorded. It's such a gift to be with you this morning. And as you can see, I'm out of my bar humbug mode. I've got my Christmas tree all decorated and I'm getting ready for the Yuletide season. And I'm so thrilled to be celebrating Christmas with you here this year. And so I have a Christmas prayer that I would like to share with you before we join our worship service today. It's a prayer that was written by Reverend Maureen Killeran. Not gold, nor myrrh, nor even frankincense would I have for you this season, but simple gifts, the ones that are hardest to find, the ones that are perfect, even for those who have everything, if such there be. I would, if I could, have for you the gift of courage, the strength to face the gauntlets only you can name, and the firmness in your heart to know that you, yes, you, can be a bearer of the quiet dignity that is human glorified. I would, if by my intention I could make it happen, have for you the gift of connection, the sense of standing on the hinge of time, touching past and future, standing with certainty that you, yes, you, are the point where it all comes together. I would, if wishing could make it so, have for you the gift of community, a nucleus of love and challenge to convince you in your soul that you, yes, you, are a source of light in a world too long believing in the dark. Not gold, nor myrrh, nor even frankincense would I have for you this season, but simple gifts, the ones that are the hardest to find, the ones that are perfect, even for those who have everything, if such there be. May it be so. And now let us begin our worship service with some music that will shortly appear on your screen. If we're honest.
Truth is harder than a lie. The dark seems safer than the light. And everyone has a heart that loves to hide. I'm a mess and so are you. We've built walls nobody can get through. Yeah, it may be hard, but the best thing we could ever do. Bring your brokenness and I'll bring mine. 'Cause love can heal what hurt divides, and mercy's waiting on the other side. If we're honest, don't pretend to be something that you're not. Living life afraid of getting caught. There is freedom found when we lay our secrets down at the cross, So bring your brokenness and I'll bring mine. 'Cause love can heal what hurt divides, and mercy's waiting on the other side. If we're honest, it would change our lives, it would set us free. It's what we need to be. So bring your brokenness and I'll bring mine. 'Cause love can heal what hurt divides, and mercy's waiting on the other side. If we're honest, if we're honest.
Good morning, everyone. The story I'm going to tell you today is a true story. And it happens to be a story of one of our ancestors. You never know which way the wind is going to blow. The wind of change can come in and change your life. And it happened to one of our ancestors, John Murray. Now, as a young man, John had what you would say great fortune. The winds of fortune blew in his direction. He had a wonderful education, a great job, a beautiful wife and a young child. Life was good. But then suddenly the winds shifted and everything changed. John's wife and son became very sick and they passed away. John then went on to lose his job, lost all of his money, and then was even thrown in jail because he couldn't pay his bills. Now, John was a very religious man. He was a Universalist. And he preached about a loving God. But now, after the winds had changed, he wasn't sure what he believed. He felt that his life was over. His friends, however, encouraged him to go someplace new so that he could start over. So he sailed from England to America. And the ship was called the Hand in Hand. And the wind, actual wind, blew this ship towards New York City. But just as they were about to get there, a deep fog rolled in. And it pushed the ship just a bit south. And the ship ran aground just off the coast of New Jersey. So John and a few other volunteers said that they would go ashore in a rowboat and they would get directions and supplies. And as John came on shore, he saw a small farmhouse, and it had a small chapel in the back. And it belonged to a man named Thomas Potter. Thomas came out and he greeted John, and he gave him food for himself and everyone on the ship. And he even invited John to come and have dinner with him that night. So when John came to dinner, Thomas showed him the chapel that had been out back. And Thomas said that he believed in a loving God who wanted all people to go to heaven. And John said that that's what he believed too. Well, Thomas said he built the chapel and he had been waiting for over a decade for God to send him a minister for that church. And he told John, "You are that minister, and I've waited a long time for you." But John didn't want to hear this. He wasn't a preacher anymore, and honestly, after everything that had happened to him, he was determined never to preach again. Yet, Thomas Potter had faith. He trusted that this was the man that God had intended to be the preacher of this chapel that he had built. So he asked him to preach that coming Sunday. And John said, I can't preach. I am on my way to New York, and as soon as the wind changes, my boat is going to set sail and we'll be on our way. So Thomas said, "Well, what if your boat hasn't sailed by Sunday? Will you preach then?" And John said, "Sure. If I'm still here on Sunday, I'll preach." And what do you think happened? Did the wind blow? Did the Hand in Hand sail away, taking John Murray with it? No. No wind blew. No ship sailed, and John Murray preached on Sunday morning, September 30th in 1770, in the chapel that Thomas Potter had built for him over a decade before. This universalist message of the power of love was good news to many who heard it. And it was good news for John, too. The winds of change blew yet again for John Murray, and he now wanted to preach more than anything. And he did it for years. And he helped found Universalism here in America. We owe a special thanks to him and to Thomas Potter. Now, today's service is about trust. And trust is deeply, intimately related to faith. It is believing deep in your core for a hopeful future. It is trusting that what is to come will be better than what is. And I cannot think of a better message for Advent and for this year of 2020 of hope and trust and faith. Our ancestors remind us of that. Blessed be, and have a wonderful rest of the service.
we would be one, as now we join in singing our hymn of love, to pledge ourselves anew to that high cause of greater understanding of who we are and what in us is true. We would be one in singing for each other, to show to all a new community. We would be one in building for tomorrow, a nobler world than we have known today. We would be one in searching for that meaning which binds our hearts and points us home away. As one we pledge ourselves to greater service, with love and justice strive to make us free.
Our reading today is a poem by Walt Whitman. I hear America singing. I hear America singing the varied carols I hear, those of mechanics, each one singing his as it should be, blithe and strong. The carpenter singing his as he measures his plank and beam. The mason singing his as he makes ready for work or leaves off work. The boatman singing what belongs to him in his boat. The deckhand singing on the steamboat deck. The shoemaker singing as he sits on his bench. The hatter singing as he stands. The woodcutter's song, the plowboy's on his way in the morning, or at noon intermission, or at sundown. The delicious singing of the mother or the young wife at work, or the girl sewing and washing. Each singing what belongs to him or her and to no one else. The day, what belongs to the day. The night, the party of young fellows, robust, friendly, singing with their mouths open their strong melodious song.
Thank you, Walt Whitman, otherwise known as Jim Hershey. So today, as Matt mentioned, I'm going to talk a little bit about trust and a little bit about leadership. I've been thinking about trust and leadership a lot lately with all this going on in our world, with this election and all that Christmas represents. As Matt mentioned, faith, trust are so inextricably linked. So today we will talk about trust, what trust is, and some of the things that are involved in building trust. Like millions of others, I've been feeling deep concern lately that my right to vote would be sabotaged somehow by our elected officials. My trust in government has been really diminished. How could we trust a system that is under partisan attack by the very people in power, the same people who are charged with ensuring its implementation. At some point in the last several months, I realized that my decades-long skepticism about the honesty of those who wield power had developed into full-fledged disbelief. And worse still, in recent times, for the first time ever, I've actually felt a low-grade level of fear of our government. I'm usually not a fearful person. I'm usually pretty brave, actually, but I've started to get scared about what's going on in our world and how it could affect me. I think of the thousands of innocent Japanese Americans who were put into camps during World War II. That is the lesson of how easily those who are in power can enslave and imprison defenseless citizens. The increase in transphobia on the part of our government in recent years is a reminder that I too could meet a similar fate. I've had this nightmare that one day I'll be required to wear a big yellow T on the outside of my clothes to identify myself as a member of the transgender community when I'm out in public. I know that seems far-fetched, but fears like that can affect your soul. And fear is based on lack of trust many times. 60 years ago, 3/4 of Americans who were asked said that they trusted the federal government to do the right thing almost always, or at least most of the time. 3/4 of Americans trusted their government. Nowadays, only 17%, fewer than a fifth, say that they can trust the government most of the time. Public trust in government is at an all-time low across all age groups, millennials, Gen Xers, baby boomers like me. And it's at an all-time low among religious groups and other socioeconomic classes and races. The lack of public trust in government is very worrisome, not just for me personally, but for all of us. That lack of trust has a chilling effect on the free exercise of people's basic civil rights, such as the right to assemble peacefully, even the right to vote. Our fifth Unitarian Universalist principle calls upon us to affirm and promote the democratic process within our congregations and in society at large. Trust is the bedrock of the democratic process, as recent events in our country have clearly shown. So this is not the time or place for me to look back and do a post-mortem on what has caused the erosion of trust in government officials to take place. But it is a good time to ask ourselves the question, what can we do to raise the bar of trust, not just in public life, but in our own lives? I've asked myself what I can do as a minister and as one of the leaders of this congregation to improve trust among the other leaders, among the members and the staff, and in myself. So how do we define trust? In her recent book, Brene Brown wrote a book called Dare to Lead. So most recent, Brene Brown describes how people in leadership positions develop trust by accepting their own vulnerability. It's not the only thing she writes about. She writes about courage as well. But owning up to being vulnerable is something that we need to do in order to be leaders and in order to build trust. I don't see many of the people in Washington or Harrisburg owning up to their own vulnerability lately. And I wonder if that has a connection to the reasons that many of us may not have trust in them. Courage, vulnerability, trust, are all closely interrelated. In her book, Brené Brown also quotes this book. I don't know if you can read it. The title might be backwards. It's called The Thin Book of Trust, and it's written by a management consultant, Charles Feltman. Feltman defines trust this way. Trust, he says, is choosing to risk making something you value vulnerable to another person's actions. Think about that just for a minute. Trust is choosing to risk making something you value vulnerable to another person's actions. And that thing that you value might even be your own safety. And that requires courage. But effective leadership, becoming an effective leader, requires owning our individual vulnerability as part of the process of building trust. This is problematic for many Americans. The myth of American exceptionalism can sometimes undermine both leadership and trust by stigmatizing vulnerability as weak, as evidence of moral failure. We've seen that recently as some public figures double down on indefensible statements rather than acknowledge that they made a mistake. Just imagine how much public trust would have been increased if senior officials recently had acknowledged that they had initially mishandled the COVID-19 pandemic. Just a simple acknowledgement of fallibility might have changed the outcome of the last election. We don't know. In Dare to Lead, Brené Brown exposes some of the myths that have stood in the way of vulnerability being seen as a virtue in leadership. I just touched on one of those, that vulnerability is a sign of weakness, but it's not. Acknowledging that we're vulnerable is a sign of strength. Brené Brown also dispels the myth that we human beings have the option or the ability to opt out of being vulnerable, or that somehow we can engineer out the uncertainty, the risk that goes with being vulnerable. We can't. We have no choice. We are all vulnerable in some ways and many ways. I'd like to share a story with you from my childhood, one that I will never forget. It was a sunny day. I was probably 12 or 13. It was in the middle of the summer, and a friend and I, my friend Michael, decided to go for a ride on our bicycles in the country. We set off about 10 o'clock in the morning, and we rode and rode and rode through some of the most beautiful farm country of Shropshire, England. It was gorgeous. This would be the 1960s. And towards the end of the afternoon, we got tired, and we realized we were really, really far from home. And so we found a payphone, and I called my mother, and I asked her to come and pick us up. She had a van that would take our bikes, and she could have brought us home. It would have been about 15 or 20 miles that we were away. And my mother said, no. You got yourself there. You can pick yourself up, bring yourself back. You got there, you come back. You have to learn to stand on your own 2 feet. That's a typical reaction that many parents might have, not just in my mother's generation, but my own too. But it's something that I remember 40, 50 years later as something that actually broke trust. In Dare to Lead, Brené Brown writes that we don't derive strength from our rugged individualism, but from our collective ability to plan, to communicate, and to work together. Our neural, hormonal, and genetic makeup support interdependence over independence. My mother's attitude that day tried to build up my independence, but it broke down my interdependence. And in so doing, it broke my trust. I think, though, that the most important myth that Brown dispels in her book, Dare to Lead, is that you have to have trust before you can be vulnerable, and that we can't allow ourselves to be vulnerable until we find a way to trust. That's false. Trust is vulnerability. We need to trust in order to be vulnerable, and we need to be vulnerable in order to build trust. What that means is that trust is built slowly over time, incrementally, step by step, each individual act of trust and vulnerability building on the one that came before. There's no single dramatic event that leads to the creation of trust. A single public mea culpa might be good for a politician's ratings and even garner some votes, but it's unlikely to create trust on its own. Building and maintaining trust in any leadership context is an ongoing process. And this book, The Thin Book of Trust, lays out 4 rules, 4 parts of building trust. First, sincerity. The assessment that you are honest, that you say what you mean and mean what you say, that you can be believed and taken seriously. It also means that when you express an opinion, it is valid, backed up by sound thinking and evidence. Sincerity means that your actions will be aligned by your words. Second, reliability. That you meet the commitments you make and you keep your promises. Third, competence. That you have the ability to do what you're going to do, what you say you're going to do. That builds trust. But the most important factor in building trust is care. Showing that you have the other person's interests in mind as well as your own when you make decisions and take actions. When people believe you hold their interest in mind, they will extend their trust more broadly to you. I've been thinking about ways to bring these lessons into my life as a minister a lot lately. And recently a metaphor came into my mind that works for me. I don't know if it will work for you, but I'm going to share it with you. I thought about water going through the kitchen sink. When you turn on the faucet, a nice, clean drain will let the water flow through cleanly, rapidly. But sometimes the water goes slowly, and you have to look at the sink and see if there's something got in the way, potato peelings or carrot peelings or whatever. Sometimes the blockage is not just in the sink, but it's in the trap below. It's so clogged that sometimes it's leaking and you have to call in a plumber, outside help. And I've been asking myself, when this flow of water is blocked, when it's going slowly, am I the one who put the potato peelings in the way? Is it something about me that's blocking the flow of water, or is it something else? Sometimes it is me. Sometimes I put on my armor plating and I put my 16-inch guns to bear on what I'm hearing and what I'm experiencing, and I don't really pay attention to what's really being said, and then the water starts to back up and the sink begins to fill. And sometimes it's not me. It's not always me. But I try to step back and ask myself that question. What is it that's stopping the flow of water? Because in that way, hopefully we can work together and build up trust. Tomorrow, the Electoral College will meet and vote on a new president. Many of us are worried that that process will fail and that the vote of the electorate will not be respected. This is a problem. We should not have to worry about such things in our society, in our world, in our democracy. If only those who are in power focus more on building trust than garnering votes, maybe we would not have to have such fears the day before the Electoral College meets. I do know that we as Unitarian Universalists, in upholding our fifth principle, need to hold in our hearts not just democracy, but the need to build trust in so many different ways. I hope that what I've shared with you this morning will begin a longer conversation. I know that in one short homily, we can't analyze and create trust, but it is a good beginning because I feel with 2021 just around the corner and what that may hold, trust is something that we need to be thinking about carefully, deeply, often, and together. May it be so. And with that, we have a wonderful recording again of our choir singing Spirit of Life. Enjoy. So we come to that point in our service when we ask for people to contribute to our online offering. Instructions for giving will shortly appear on your screen. During this time of the pandemic, the costs of running the church have not gone down, they have not changed, and our commitment to social justice has not diminished, and we still need to support our Share the Plate partner. I'm going to ask our Zoom operator now, Susan, to share with you the video from our Share the Plate partner for this month. And while she's sharing the video, the instructions for giving online will also be provided. Know that we really appreciate everything that you give. We promise to use your gifts wisely and well. And we are deeply, deeply grateful for everything that you contribute to making our church work and to helping us to bring our beliefs, our values into the public square. Thank you for giving as generously as you can at this time.
Everybody
Everybody
has a right
to live
health care.
health care.
Everybody don't stop.
The Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival.
When we get organized,
Street heading south, and we're marching so that people can hear our voices. So we're here to let people know that we're not going to just stand back and let you cut our health care off and just treat us as we're disposable. We're not. So we're here marching so that everybody can hear us.
We'll be starting right here and then marching slowly down to Hahnemann Hospital to show people here in Philadelphia and around the country that the problem is the system that would spend our money renovating a police headquarters while a hospital sits empty and abandoned by the private equity manager who owns it, Joel Friedman, who is hoping to sell it to produce luxury housing. And we're calling out the mayor, Health Commissioner Thomas Farley, and Governor Wolf for standing by and letting this happen.
Too many years we've been divided, now it's time to unify. We're getting into step to win our freedom. A bit louder. We're getting into step. We're getting into step. We're getting into step to win our freedom. Too many years we've been divided, now it's time to unify. We're getting into step to win our freedom.
We believe that we can win. We believe that we can win. We believe that everybody has a right to live.
Last time make them hear. We're getting into step to win our freedom. Too many years we've been divided, now it's time to unify. We're getting into step to win our freedom. Beautiful.
Yes, everybody has a right to live in freedom. That is our UU principle of affirming the inherent worth and dignity of every single person. And so we continue now in the spirit of sharing. At this time in our service, we share matters of the heart. I'm sorry that I don't have candles to light here in my home, but I'm going to invite you to envision a small chalice lighting, a small candle for every one of these matters of the heart that I'd like to share with you this morning. Holly Mariels shared that she would like to light a candle for Charles Mariels, who had a kidney removed the day after Thanksgiving. She writes that we are so grateful that the surgery went well and he is at home recuperating. We are thankful for the expertise of his surgeon. A matter of the heart, a cause for gratitude and concern and support for the process that's going on in our country right now, for the pain and agony that we see on the news every night of litigation and claims and counterclaims and divisiveness. Let us hope that all of this will come to an end and that we can find a place of reconciliation and forgiveness across this entire wonderful, beautiful country. And lastly, a candle for all of our unspoken joys and concerns. I know that many of you at home and around the world are holding things in your heart right now. May the joys be magnified and may the concerns be diminished by the sharing. And with that, we turn now to our closing words. And in the spirit of building trust, I thought I would share with you this Sunday something that we haven't read together for a long time. We don't have time to put the words on the screen, but I will read them to you. They are our UUCY Congregational Covenant. I'll read them to you. Well, they are about trust. Affirming the Unitarian Universalist principles and guided by love and mutual respect in our behavior towards one another, we covenant to honor our values and our diversity as our community's common strengths. We covenant to be responsible for our actions and our words, to speak and listen with our hearts and minds open, to give of ourselves and receive that which is given, to keep and honor personal boundaries, to respect privacy and confidentiality, and to unite on the side of love for our earth, our community, and ourselves. May it be so. May your roots grow deep, may your branches grow wide. Next Sunday is our Sunday annual Christmas pageant, which Matt Shinneman and Marion Rubach have been working on very hard, particularly Matt. We hope to see you next week. With that, I will turn you over to Jim, who's going to read the words of our chalice extinguishing.
As our Sunday morning service draws to a close, we extinguish our chalice. Please feel free to follow along by reading the words on the screen as we extinguish our chalices here in the sanctuary and at home. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we're together again.
If you search for tenderness, it isn't hard to find. You can have the love you need to live. But if you look for truthfulness, you might just as well be blind. It always seems to be so hard to give. can always find someone to say they sympathize if I wear my heart out on my sleeve. But I don't want some pretty face to tell me pretty lies. All I want is someone to believe. I can find a lover, I can find a friend, I can have security until the bitter end. Anyone can comfort me with promises again. I know, I know, whoa. When I'm deep inside of me, don't be too concerned. I won't ask for nothing while I'm gone. But when I want sincerity, tell me where else can I turn? 'Cause you're the one that I